Well, hello, my name is Bradley Butler. I am the Executive Director and Curator at Main Street Arts in Clifton Springs, New York. I want to thank you all for joining us for this first of our online artist talks with artists from Biblio Spectaculum, which is a national juried exhibition of artist books and text-based visual work. And it includes 33 artists from 12 different states. And it was juried by Scott McCarney, who is an artist living in Rochester, New York. And let's see here. So each Friday at 5 p.m. Throughout the month of July, we'll be showing up on Facebook Live to talk with 4 different artists from the exhibition. It's a great opportunity to get to know the work of artists from around the country who utilize artist books and text as part of their art practice. And tonight I am joined by Bachrun LoMele of Pinehurst, California, Terry Schupbach-Gordon of Tobaccoville, North Carolina, Sue O'Donnell of Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, and Ryan Lewis of Kalamazoo, Michigan. So I'd like to thank each of you for participating in this virtual, informal, yet hopefully highly informative event. What we'll do is we're going to start by having each of you introduce yourselves and tell us a bit about your art practice, and then you'll each get a chance to talk more in depth about the work included in the show. And for anyone who is watching, we'll be sharing images of some of the work that's in the show as well. And I should also mention that this exhibition is open by appointment here at Main Street Arts, and also we just launched the interactive version of the show online at interactive.mainstreetartscs.org. If anyone has questions, you can type them in the comments, and we'll ask those at the end. So I guess first up here, we'll talk with Bachrun, and you can take it away and tell us a little bit about yourself and your art practice.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be part of this scene. It looked excellent. I'm a bit nervous. I hope you don't mind if I read my description of the project, a bigger project, which has been going on for about 5 years now, and which the pieces that are in your show are a part of. It's a project I've called Burn Pile, and it began as a roving interactive art installation by means of which I accumulated a donated communal hypothetical truth essence. Functioning both as a significance harvesting unit and as a display and broadcast venue, it aspired to link people in a community of heartfelt incoherence, imbuing meaning by leaching out meaning, and probing the tender boundary between public and private experience. Truth donors were invited to speak inside a private booth. Their statements were immediately scrambled with prior utterances from other donors, thereby losing any obvious or accurate meaning. They could then choose whether or not to release these garbled statements to be variously commemorated by me. I deployed the booth all around Central Valley of California in shopping malls, thrift stores, flea markets, and public parks. And I'm now in the process of commemorating the accumulated sincerity of these many donors. By carefully making objects utilizing my misreadings of people's innermost expressions, I aspire to show respect for an ambient sincerity free of specificity. So in setting up this booth, this soundproof booth, I just kind of went into it. I was looking for some way of interacting with the idea of truth or people's approach to the idea of truth. And I didn't know where it would lead. But as I saw how people took it really seriously, I was very touched by that. And so I felt that I had to be respectful and kind of laborious in my responses to it. And I've been trying many different ways. And one of them has been these little paper plates. which have the added advantage is that I can ship them more easily. I first started doing it actually on ceramic plates and cups and things. So I'm looking, I'm approaching truth as something that you can't look directly at. And I always remember when I was a kid being taught about looking at the Andromeda galaxy was that it was visible to the human eye. It's the farthest object visible to the human eye, but you can only see it by looking off to the side of it, and then you get a sense of it there at your peripheral vision, and that's how I'm approaching truth and sincerity and all the. I mean, there's so many different versions of the truth right now. I think that's all I have to say about what I'm doing here.
Well, it's definitely interesting to think about, truth and what that means to an individual. And, there are many truths, I suppose. And, to think about the way that you've, talked about having that soundproof booth. I mean, that gave people an opportunity to really maybe share things that they wouldn't have otherwise.
Clearly, it was like that. Yeah. And they could delete it. We set up a program that we made one for this purpose that would randomly take out words and put it in words from other people, not in any sensible way. It was really very jumbled, but you could kind of get a thread of people trying to get something across. So that's what I make use of. So the writing that I use on those plates is that I scramble it even further, or just make it more obscure as I use the text. Like the piece on the wall behind me represents the underside of a dining table. That's all written on with these statements. So
yeah, and then you end up with a whole new truth after combining all these people's truths. So, yeah, that's
right. I'm hoping it's the spirit of all our intentions.
All right. Well, great. Well, thank you very much, and we'll hear from Bachrun again shortly, and you'll also be able to see the two pieces included in the exhibition as well. So, great.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be part of it. Yeah.
Okay, and Terry, would you like to tell us a little bit about your art practice and your background a bit?
Sure. I would like, first I'll begin by saying how great it is to be in an exhibit of books and bookmakers and language and all of that. Thank you. I came to books and the book arts through printmaking. I do etchings and woodcuts and lithographs and have for some time, but I was kind of late to the book arts game. I started printmaking actually almost by accident. I was in I was in college. I was hoping to go into psychology, I think, and this was in the 70s. So I wanted to make a big difference in the world. I was hoping to work with kids with amputees and people with disabilities, partly because I have a disability. And I ended up in the hospital because I contracted a lung disease out of the blue. And so my journey as a person studying psychology was kind of abruptly ended. And I found that I could still cut woodcuts in the hospital. My mother supplied me with lots of large pieces of wood and woodcut tools. And for some unknown reason, I could ink it up in the bathroom of the hospital that I was in. Now, we don't think that could happen today, but at the time, it was just where I inked up my woodcuts. I happened to see an exhibit at the time in the museum across the road from the hospital of Kathy Kolbitz. And I tell people that when I went into the exhibit, I was sort of still thinking, oh, I'll go work with kids with disabilities and change the world. But after seeing that show, I think I really understood the power of work that just addresses issues of social justice, issues of what does it mean when you make something by hand? What does it mean when you use language to express what you feel? And when I left that exhibit, I was thoroughly a printmaker. And that was in 1971. And I have really never but looked back except to maybe add bookmaking to that set of events. I tell people that the thing I love about printmaking is it really is not the only thing I do. I work as a storyteller and a puppeteer and a disability advocate. And all of those things for me work together in the imagery. In the work itself, I work with emotions that I want to be emotionally affirmative, even though the work is sometimes difficult. And since I see the world through the lens of disability, it's kind of more about reclaiming a concept of grace and imbuing it with ideas of fragility and changing our sense of what it is to be strong to include what it is to be infirm. And as a storyteller, I, somewhere in the middle of all of that love of printmaking and love of tools and cutting wood blocks and etchings, the idea that language informs the images was, it just became very important to me. And so now as a printmaker, I also work with artist books and the printed word. So.
Great. Well, you can definitely, you get the sense of the passion behind the work just hearing you talk. So that's really, really great to see, and interesting to think about, cutting wood cuts in the hospital. I mean, that's.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've got, what happens, I think, to everyone at some point is you have this idea that you're going to become this kind of artist or this kind of human being, but your life doesn't happen that way. And you still have to take what you feel and what you believe and make it into something that's tangible. And for me, doing that, I mean, it honestly, I mean, maybe this life in the pandemic is something like this. You never expect to be shut down for that long. I was in the hospital about a year, and it was life affirming as well as difficult. And I think that's, for me, that is something that I feel very strongly about the work that I do, is that it has to be that also. So.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, thank you. And again, we'll hear from Terry again shortly, and we'll see the work that she's got in the show. So thank you, Terry. And Sue, you are up next.
Okay. Listening to you guys talk about how you sort of became who you are in the art world is really exciting. And thinking about my own history and my own truth and my own sort of way of working, I guess I've always been interested in how our past sort of informs our future, and how the memories that we have about things that we've done and places we've been sort of infiltrates the choices we make in our future. And so my practice has always been about looking at myself in a really reflective way and thinking about how I can map out my own past and find ways to sort of create a visual that has meaning for me and where I've been. Since you guys are sort of sharing sort of life events, I got into book arts late in life, kind of like you, Terry, in a way. Was married to an officer in the military who dropped dead one day at the age of 35 from a heart attack. And he had left a journal of sort of his writing. He had been commissioned to teach writing at West Point and had gone back to school to get his master's to be able to do that. And I found his journal after he was gone, and what he wrote in there was just so revealing. And it really got me thinking about how we keep things hidden from our loved ones and the people that have meaning to me. And so I really kind of embraced the idea of what's hidden and what's revealed through that experience. And so my work really does kind of try to find those hidden truths, you know, in our lives. And that is kind of where I base my work from. So I look forward to sharing the work that's in the show with you guys.
Wow, thank you so much for that. Yeah, and you know, I think it's interesting hearing everyone's, I mean, so far everyone's perspective on things, and you know, thinking about that in relation to the type of work that's in this show. You know, because from the point of view of the gallery, putting on a call for this type of work, you know, you're really focusing on the physical form of things, like, oh, we're going to get, you know, artist books are going to be submitted, you know, and then, you know, other work that has text in it. But, you know, you think of it more like the mechanics, not really what, you know, the reason for people using, you know, the media and, you know, the specific execution for each piece. And so just hearing you talk while I'm sitting here in the show, you know, it's really interesting to see that, you know, what you're saying and thinking about the choices of, you know, books and text. So I think that's just kind of interesting to think about. So I just want to remind people that if you have questions, you can type them in the comments here. Thank you, Sue. We'll talk again to you shortly. And Ryan, you are up next. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your work.
Hi, I'm Ryan Lewis. I live in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I originally trained as a graphic designer. I actually have 2 degrees, a BFA and an MFA, both with an emphasis in graphic design. And so that work, and I worked as a graphic designer for several years too before going to grad school. So that, I mean, all of that work involves typography, designing books, selecting materials for printed objects, and thinking about all of that. And then also as a graphic designer, I became interested in type design, which is something that I incorporate into this piece that I have in the exhibition. But then also, after I got my first degree in graphic design, I was working as a graphic designer for several years professionally, and at the company I worked at was doing motion graphics, so there's an interest in motion in there. And so as the art that I've been making for the past few years is kind of centers around that idea too. So I've been making these stop motion animations for the past several years as part of a series of work I call Everted Sanctuaries. And oh yeah, I should also mention currently I'm a graphic design professor of graphic design at Western Michigan University, and there I also teach courses about typography, but also bookmaking and book design and type design. So they're all kind of related to what's going on in this exhibition, which is interesting. So like I said, this work called Everted Sanctuaries, this body work that this work is part of, is centers around the idea of introversion. And probably most people are familiar with what that means, but introverts are people that get their energy internally rather than externally, and they enjoy solitude, but they often avoid situations where they have to interact with large groups of people. However, that's not possible for them to stay in their own little bubble all of the time. They have to kind of learn how to interact with the rest of the world, and are required to do so in certain situations. So the work is kind of about that situation of becoming something you're not for a period of time, and what sort of effects that has, what beauty can be found in that, but also what sort of risks or what sort of tensions are there that come out of that. So yeah, that's a quick summary.
Great. Well, thank you. And there's also, I mean, we won't be able to really, I mean, people can see the work when they come in and they can really fully experience it. Online, we'll have, for any video pieces in the show, we have some, some stills from the video pieces. But one of the things that I love about your work in the show is there's this, kind of ethereal soundtrack to it, and there's this sound of the fluttering pages. And so when I see the words behind you there, it's like I can hear that because I've been listening to it so far for 2 days. So
Sorry about that.
no, it's good. It's meditative, and there's a couple of other videos that are also playing sound as well. So so great. Well, thank you. And before we get to going back to Bachrun here, I want to just read a couple of comments that people have said. So Lauren Pruitt says, fascinating. Love the story, Terry. And then she also said, what a journey, Sue. And she also says, great background, Ryan. So fan of all of you, so that's great. And then also Amy Freeman says, hi, Terry, from your family in Michigan. So again, if you've got any other comments or questions, please put those in the comment section here on Facebook. So, all right, well, I think, let's see. Sorry, so right now, we're going to hear from everyone again, and I'm also going to be doing some screen sharing. So it's going to get real high tech. So I apologize if there's any, technical difficulties. So Bachrun, would you like to talk a little more about the work specifically in the show?
Okay, that's an example of one of these, well, I refer to these things as commemoratives. They're commemorating whatever garbled fragment I pick up from this booth. And this is an example where I use imagery. Sometimes I use, kind of eagle-like creatures or whatever, things that represent truth or sincerity or seeking. Sometimes like in the other piece that you have in the show, it's a representation of the mall where I was able to set up in an abandoned storefront. And I use silver leaf and ink. It's aluminum leaf. It's fake silver leaf, and a kind of paper mache technique. It's a little bit laborious, but because I try to make a lot of these, part of the way I show this is in a big heap on the floor, as if a building had collapsed. So there might be, but I make everything out of paper, and I do use a lot of printmaking. I do kind of representations of wood grain, and then I mount it on gator board to approximate lumber and do the writing all over it. So they're just writing everywhere, and LED signs, which symbolize embers or flames, are running with the statements kind of buried in this heap. Also, I've made a paper hutch that I display these things on too.
Sue, you said you have a question for Bachrun?
Yeah.
I'm just kind of curious. They're called burn piles. I mean, do you actually physically burn anything?
No, it has the look of a burn pile because of these running LED signs that are in the heap when I have it all set up. Yeah, like a big pile. And I think of it as a burn pile because people have given me their, presumably, a sincere expression that then just joins everyone else's and it becomes something else. So it's that kind of a burn pile. Yeah, I don't actually burn it. It's way too much work to make this stuff.
Well, that's interesting. And the commemoratives, they're like commemorative plates, right? So, was it just that people were sharing the truths and you wanted to kind of put them on something and kind of hold them up in that light? Or, where did that come from?
People, it's one of the places that people put important statements or guiding whatever, historical moments, whatever, that kind of thing. And it's a way of kind of commemorating or enshrining this this idea of truth that is not it's not what people intended to say, but
Yeah.
they meant what they said. The intention is still there.
And someone has a question for you as well on Facebook, and it's a quick one, so I'm just asking now instead of later. But the question from Monica Drake is, where can we see your installation where it's in the pile with the writing?
Well, I'm going to be doing a show in LA if it happens in September, where I'll have a big installation at Gallery 825.
Okay. And do you have samples
in Hollywood?
on the website at all? Or?
That should be on the website.
Okay.
Yeah,
BachrunLoMele.com. Yeah, and there's pictures of, you can see a lot of pictures of piles there, installations.
Great. And Monica, who's also on the show, says, yes, I live in LA. So, that's great.
Okay, that's great. Well, maybe it'll happen. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's any other truths you'd like to share with us about the work?
No, thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity, though. Yeah, it's very nice.
Great, great. Well, thank you so much. So Terry, would you like to tell us a bit about the work in the show specifically?
So I would just start kind of where I ended last time to say printmaking and book arts isn't all that I do. I do work as a puppeteer. And about 40 years ago, I got a grant to go to England, document puppetry, historical puppetry, to come back and lecture on the places that puppetry fits into the history of theater. And I came back, I did the work, I gave the lectures, I did some etchings and some woodcuts around puppet history, but I never did the book. I just couldn't quite figure what it all meant to me. I had this kind of idea that it would really be about history, the history of puppets, which was this other thing that I did when I wasn't being a printmaker. And my prints are very different than this. They have text and but they're not as specifically illustrative as this. So anyway, so 40 years went by, and for some reason, I just kept, every now and then I would go back to this. What did I want to do that I didn't do? And then I started looking at the different theaters, and I realized that I was not so much interested in the history of the puppets, but the way that puppetry brings, when I started looking at the puppets as a way to ride through the reasons that people believe that what they do makes a difference, the puppets that came up were very different. And a lot of the theaters that are in this collection are the Y is Yahya Coulibaly, who is a family, he represents a family of puppeteers in Africa that do street theater. The Blind Summit is a theater in England. That the X is I'm just looking at what's here. The X is a Brazilian theater that talks about what we're doing through the earth. There's a theater called Handspring Theater that is they're in South Africa, and they do programs on social justice and apartheid. And then I suddenly discovered there's all kinds of printmaking connections to puppetry that I didn't know. And so it became quite a different thing. And the idea to do an abecedarium, it's A through Z. And I think, well, first it stunned me how many letters there are in the alphabet when you really try and put a book together with 26 different images. I had a great time doing it. And once I was done, it's a little accordion fold with the different, there's Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. And it was a wonderful adventure because I saw things in myself that I didn't really expect to find. It was just a fun piece to work on. And it's all, you have a Vandercook letterpress, so it's all hand letterpress. The blocks are milled to type high, so they fit on the letterpress as well. So.
And I got a spread here so that people can see, a full spread there of the book. And also I should mention that any of the books in this show, including this one, we have photographed each spread so people can actually flip through the book online if they can't make it in to see the show, which is a pretty great feature for the interactive show. So, well, great. Well, and anything else to share about the book, Terry?
That about covers it.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. Okay. So we got Sue's at work up here now, and you can take it away. We got both pieces in the show. I have them here, so we can talk about whichever one you'd like first.
Okay. So this one's called Cat's Cradle, and it was a piece that I made at Wells College during a workshop. Shortly after my older sister lost her battle with cancer. And so I was really kind of in my own head thinking about introspection and really thinking about the memories that I had with my sister. And one of the prompts for this in this workshop was to just look through some disparate magazines and try to find connections. And one of these books had a cat's cradle. One of these books was about just quotes. And I just started finding myself creating this sort of magic wallet structure that was sort of this puzzle that using the words from lyrics of a Grateful Dead song that happened to be one of my sister's favorites. And we played Cat's Cradle as children, and it just became this really important sort of piece in honor of her. And it was not something I planned, it just kind of happened, and I love it when that works out that way. So this is for Sherry.
That's beautiful.
When you open it, you can, if you aren't familiar with the magic wallet structure, it actually is just two sides, but it can open from both sides. So it's got a triple, like a quadruple reading. The hands can be together or they're separate. The words flow as the lyrics do, or they're separated. So I don't know if you want to just move to one of the other images.
Yes.
So you can sort of see how, I think I've got 4 shots.
Okay. Yeah. So this is the second image here.
Yeah.
And then here's the third.
And so that's where, with the hands together. The other image was with the hands separate. And then the cat's cradle works as a cat's cradle, or it works with the text on the inside. So it's really a fun book to play with.
Yeah, and we've played with it, and especially when we were photographing it for the interactive version of the site, it was realizing. I mean, I knew how it functioned, but I didn't realize that the image kind of changed, like you described. So that it goes in the hand is full.
So I Xeroxed my hand and then traced it into tracing paper to be able to have my touch as part of this also. So I mean, it was just, if you ever get an opportunity to do workshops at Wells College, they're excellent.
Yeah, and we've actually had, so we did an exhibition here because we're not far from Wells College. It was called Ink and Paper, and it was artist books and printmaking. And it was 5 different organizations, art centers in New York State that dealt with book arts and printmaking. So they were one of them. So basically, each place got to invite 5 artists that they're associated with. So we had people from Wells. Their work was here. So definitely a great place for sure.
This other piece, I think I made at Wells also.
Oh, wow.
So I'm always collecting things and re-looking at things, and Return Path was a piece that started as a one-off timeline that represented an online correspondence with my now life partner, who I met online. And so we emailed back and forth, and that's how we got to know each other. And this is the actual email correspondence that I then plotted into this timeline based on when the ding would come into your inbox and how much time was spent without a new email and then having the email in there. So I ended up folding this up into a little Coptic tiny timeline book that represents this email correspondence back and forth with Doug. We ultimately met face to face, and the email correspondence then sort of dribbled off. But for 3 months, we basically just got to know each other via email. And this is a book based on those emails. And the timeline was really fun to make because I just really love sort of scientifically plotting everything and trying to fit the words into the little shapes as they go from time point to time point. And I actually think I made this in a class with Scott McCarney. He might have. I think he.
The summer institute that they do there.
Well, I think he was. No, this was a workshop at Wells. Although I have taken his workshop at up in Rochester also.
Well, they do a summer thing at Wells too, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. You know, my story, once I lost my husband, I reinvented myself and went back to school to get my MFA and just kind of started a whole new trajectory in my life and putting words and images together and working as a graphic designer and then wanting to actually make work to put on the walls rather than do the exhibition catalogs of the artists, and just kind of changing my whole kind of way of thinking. And so now I teach graphic design, but I think I'm more an artist than I am a designer. But anyway, that's what this book is about. It's sharing a time in my life where I was meeting someone new.
Great, and we have a couple of comments as well from people here. Let's see here. So Lauren Pruitt says, Sue, the layering is beautiful. And then another beautiful exclamation from Amy Freeman. And then Monica Drake again says, Sue, you've put in so much emotion and personal meaning into your works. And she shared heart as well. So thank you for those comments, and please keep them coming here. And great, well, thank you so much.
So, like I said, this piece is part of a series of work called Everted Sanctuaries, and every piece in the series shows various objects that are transforming from something you think you understand what it is, and then it kind of transforms into something else entirely that you didn't expect. And so I put a lot of thought into picking what object I'm going to work with, and finding materials and objects that I can kind of discover along the way. And I don't always know exactly what's going to happen going into it. I have some ideas, but once I get working with the material, the object, a lot of things come along the way, which is fun. But I also enjoy having that constraint of just picking one thing to work with and then just making it happen. So for this piece, I picked a book, and the book is handmade by me. And then and one of the reasons I picked the book is because books tend to be introverted in nature, but then they also have this, well, because they have a cover and you never know what's hiding beneath that cover. So there's kind of an opening, a sense of mystery to them. But then also that, reading a book itself is a fairly introverted activity, a very personal activity. So I thought that made sense with the concept. Like I said, I made the book and then I animated it. And one thing that's different about this piece than some of the other pieces, usually I just work with the physical materials and take stop motion animation of that. In this piece, I actually combined that manual stop motion animation with some digital stop motion animation, and I should explain what I mean by that. What I mean is, so I didn't just use a typical animation program like Adobe After Effects, where you say, I want this object to start here and then to go over here, and then the program fills everything in between. Actually used Adobe InDesign, which is a typesetting program for printing books, designing books, and other printed materials. And I created each frame one at a time, because I wanted it to retain some of that kind of jerkiness and awkwardness that stop motion has, so that the two types of animation would fuse together nicely. So all of the animations that happen on the pages are in Adobe InDesign, and then when the text starts to escape from the book and do other things, a lot of that is done manually with objects, physical objects that I was moving with my hands. So let's see.
First, that's an intense way to do that. I mean, did you? I mean, because so I have a graphic design background. I worked in a print shop, and then Sarah, who's the assistant director, she is a graphic designer as well. And it's just, that sounds like an intense undertaking to do all that in InDesign. So is that something you kind of found out how to do yourself, or how did that come about for you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was pretty familiar with the software, and I thought of what it could do, and also the types of. I mean, I guess it kind of made sense, since it was a book, and I was kind of getting into a book in a way, and that's part of the process of making a book, at least now in current days. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I did use some of the, like the character styles or the paragraph styles to help automate things, but I did actually go through and make a still for every single frame. No computer filling in the middle here. Another aspect to the piece that, like I said earlier, I do type design, and all of the type in the piece was designed by me. So it's kind of a way of incorporating my own voice. The text that is actually being animated, I selected all of that text. It's found text from Sherlock Holmes, because he's considered an introverted character. So I pulled different parts that kind of reference that idea. And I'm not totally, it doesn't really matter to me if people read that, but I just wanted to have something there that related and had a purpose to it. And there are words you can pick out that help express that idea. And then you mentioned the audio earlier, Brad. It incorporates the sound of a piano. And one of the reasons for that is going back to the concept of introversion and how introverts, they're forced to pretend like they're not introverts sometimes and be in a large group of people. They have to be something they're not. So that piano references the idea of performance for me, and how they're in a sense performing, but it is, as you mentioned, also meditative and soothing, kind of what an introvert would need to recover from such an event. But in these object transformations, I see them as metaphors for that process of becoming introverted or extroverted when you're an introvert, and changing yourself, becoming something you're not. And I hope the audience and viewers for it kind of get a sense of, both what the costs are for doing that, but then also, you know, the remarkability and the adaptability and the flexibility of what's going on, and be able to appreciate people that are different than they are, and maybe have a little bit of empathy in that way. So.
Great. And is there a place, like say if people can't, you know, come in to see the show to actually view the animation, do you have a place online where people can see it in its entirety, or even a clip?
Yeah, I do. I have a Vimeo account, and I can
Okay.
send that information. I don't
Yeah,
remember the
yeah.
exact
And could
URL at the
people, I mean,
moment.
if say if people just went to Vimeo and searched your name, would they be able to maybe
Yeah,
find?
they might be able to find it if they search Ryan Lewis Everted Sanctuaries.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Yeah, because I think that people would love to be able to engage with that. So, all right. Well, great. Oh yeah, Sue, did you have a? Yes, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I was just wondering, Ryan, so the piece isn't a still piece. It's on a video screen, and it's an animated piece.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't actually see the book. We watch a movie, basically.
Yeah, the book is inside the movie. Yeah,
Thank you.
correct.
Yeah, well, and I was just thinking that it's interesting because Sue, you had the return path piece was taking, you know, these emails which start out digitally and then you're putting them into an analog book, and then Ryan, you're kind of doing that in reverse in a way. But you also have the handmade object as well. So it's interesting, and it's interesting seeing how the four artists each week come together, because you know you're all doing such different things, but there is an interesting overlap. So I think that that's a really great kind of surprise for us to be able to see how that plays out. So it's great. Let's see if I can unmute everyone here. I think this brings us to the end of our talk. And again, I want to thank each of these artists for joining us, and also just want to remind everyone that you can go to interactive.mainstreetartscs.org, and you can scroll through the exhibition, and it's almost as if you're walking through the show. And you can click on pieces to enlarge them, and then even see things that are for sale in our online shop as well from the show. So you could buy some of the works in the show too. So, yeah. So I think that's it. That's what we got. So any last words from anyone?
I just want to say thank you. I think this has been so much fun. I really, really enjoyed meeting the other artists, some of the other artists in the show. I hope our paths cross again. And maybe I'll try to figure out a way. I don't think Bloomsburg is too far from Clifton Springs. Maybe I can come up and see the show. I don't know. I'll have to.
Yeah, and that brings up another point. Thank you for that. Is that you know, people can go to our non-interactive site, the mainstreetartscs.org, and book an appointment to come for an appointment on Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. So you know, whether you're making a little bit of a trip or you're just coming from, you know, a few towns over, you can just go online, make an appointment, and come see works by these four artists, as well as the rest of the 33 artists in the exhibition. So
Thank you.
yeah. Well, again, thank you all, and really appreciate it. And we'll see everyone out there next week when we have four additional artists, and we'll see you then. So have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.